The Last of Us Part 1 on Grounded can be brutal. It can be unforgiving, and it can be utterly punishing. But it's still worth playing because it is the most immersive and realistic way to play this survival game. You feel the tension and the scarcity that would really inhabit a person surviving in this post-apocalyptic situation with less ammo, no HUD, no listen mode, and much smarter enemies. And that's why I put myself through it. Dr. Pooplove here, and today I want to talk about my grounded journey with The Last of Us Part 1 and offer you the best tips to get through it. That even if you aren't the greatest and typically play this game on easier modes, you can still get through it. And stick around until the end because I will also be teaching you how to get through even the most difficult parts, like the hotel basement, those pesky bloaters, and frickin' David. Let's get right into it. Of course, though, all this could have been avoided if Joel had decided to stop and help that family, because they wouldn't have gotten hit by that car. They wouldn't have run into that Fedra officer, and Sarah wouldn't have tragically met her demise. But that's not what happened. So here we are, 20 years later, surviving. And when Joel and Tess start their journey, this is what gets me to my first tip. Of course, with Grounded, it's best to try to stealth as much as you can. It's obviously not always foolproof. You can't guarantee that you're going to stay in stealth. And what you're going to slowly realize over this journey is that I suck at stealth. But doing your best to stay undetected is critical in a very effective way in order to make sure that you are in stealth is what I call the perimeter approach. And that is by hanging around the edges of the playable space and picking off enemies that are on the outer edge one by one. This leaves your backside covered and allows you to focus more so on people hanging out on the edges. And then that allows you to then start working your way in closer and closer as you go. If you were to just go straight into the middle and start taking people out, you might get caught from the back. You just don't have all your bases covered. So by doing this perimeter approach, you're able to systematically remove enemies one by one, and it's just a lot more effective. Of course, things start getting a bit harder once you meet up with your surrogate daughter that happens to be the cure for all of humanity. And this is about the time when you need to start managing your resources effectively. Firstly, you should try to check every corner of the map in order to gather as much supplies as you can. And you really just need to hoard them rather than using them so easily. Now, this includes even doing some risky things at times, like trying to unlock this lockbox with a room full of enemies. Because by doing this, you're going to gather resources that you will need in order to survive the much harder sections of the game. Now, this also extends to your supplements and gear, which you also need to spend wisely. Supplements, I like to prioritize max health because you will take damage, and this allows you to live just a little bit longer. But weapon sway is also good because it makes your gun that much more reliable when you do need to use it. Also, as far as this first workbench, I would say save your gear and skip it. I will explain why later. And you also need to save your shivs. I know it's tempting to use them on clickers, but I promise it's better to use almost anything else. And I would rather die and try again than use that shiv because it really should be saved for the shiv doors, which give you mega resources. That is just going to make your journey that much easier. By following these basic principles, I made it through the museum and got to see that view that you can't deny. And as we headed to the Capitol, we said our emotional goodbye to Tess. And this is where I tried the perimeter stealth approach. But, well, I suck at stealth, so I just sloppily fought my way through and eventually ran to the exit. And this gets me to my next tip, and that is that running away is honestly a great approach to a lot of scenarios, as you can save your supplies and just move on. But it's not always that simple as being able to run straight through, especially because enemies have good shots. So I'll give you more tips on that later. Eventually, though, we make our way to Bill's town, and Bill saves us from his own trap. And following him through his town, we get to the next workbench, which you are now allowed to use, but only after you get this toolbox. And the reason for this is getting this toolbox unlocks your ability to now get a second small and second large firearm slot. And this is going to tremendously help you by giving you access to more guns and thusly more bullets. Generally, from here, after I unlock these two things, I like to focus on my bow, especially the draw speed, so that it becomes a little bit more quickly usable. But I also like to get clip capacity up on single shot guns like the hunting rifle so that I can fire more bullets faster. Armor piercing also comes into play, but a little bit later, so it's not really needed now. Now, once once we're good to go and we've properly hoarded Bill's home, it's time to learn how to face off against the clickers. Now, of course, the best thing to do with clickers is to sneak right by. And you can do this more easily by holding an object or pointing a gun and moving while it's aiming. But on grounded, you need to move a little bit slower than you can normally get away with here, so I only deflect my stick about halfway, but it keeps me moving at a very steady and stable pace to get through certain sections. But it's even harder on grounded because any movement will get caught if a clicker does their echolocation thing close enough, or if they just happen to walk right into you. And that's where especially bricks, but even to a lesser extent bottles, really are key to have on you at all times, especially when facing clickers, but really throughout the whole game. You should always make sure to have one of these on you because it can always get you out of a pinch. Of course, one thing you can do is use them to lead clickers away from you by tossing them in the opposite direction. But you can also do this auto aim quick toss, which will freeze clickers in this position, which allows you to more easily take them out. But the brick is even more special because it has this 3-punch ability, which the bottle doesn't, and so it can be even more useful in getting yourself out of a jam with a clicker, especially so you can avoid using that shiv. And now, along your journey with Bill, it's time that you kind of start preparing for an upcoming bloater fight. Now, I wish I could say that on my way to the high school, working my way, I played flawlessly, that I stealthed perfectly all the way to this bloater, but I didn't. I got caught almost anywhere and I had to fire my guns. But I made sure I didn't break a cardinal rule of mine, which is to save your throwables for the hardest fights. And that's what I did. By the time I reached the bloater, I had 2 mollies and a nail bomb ready, and I chucked them at him right away. All it took was my remaining revolver ammo to do the finishing touches. And to me, it's really key to do this all really quickly because it just gets the bloater done and over with before he can really do anything to you. And as far as the others, you can certainly take them out if you want, or you can run around and let your teammates take them out. And that's my next tip, which is to use your buddy as bait. They can often take out guys for you, and this lets you save your ammo. And all you really have to do is watch out for these big plus signs over their head that tells you they're in danger, but basically you are free and clear to sucker punch the enemy. And the reality is, if you're patient enough, you can just endlessly run around until your buddy takes out everyone. Or you can throw in occasional sucker punches every once in a while, but ultimately you are faster than the infected, so they won't catch you. But after we got through this section, we leave Bill and we're going to enter into the much more dangerous territory of Pittsburgh and face off against humans, which tend to actually be your greatest threat in this game, mostly because they can shoot back. And if you can manage in these earlier sections of Pittsburgh, stealth is going to be your best bet. I managed to let this group walk right by as I headed into the bookstore, and I even found a nice stealth path off to the right of the alley heading into the bookstore, which let me pass by most of the enemies. Of course though, when I got to the top, I was left with a difficult choice because there was this shiv door, but when I tried to go there, I couldn't really do it stealthily, so I ended up getting caught and oftentimes would just die. And this gets me to my next tip, which is sometimes you just need to pass up the extra supplies because the risk is not worth the reward. Most times it is, but this shiv door had me dying so much, and all I was really missing out on was a few supplements and a pretty big amount of gear, but not a game-breaking amount. Ultimately, the exit was just right to my right, so I decided to say screw it and get the hell out of here instead. And after some similar stealth through the next set of enemies, I got to the most infamous and scary part of the game, the hotel basement. Now, despite the reputation, the hotel basement is actually extremely easy, as long as you can manage to have 4 shotgun shells and 1 brick or bottle. All you have to do is the following. Grab the key card from the second level. This will spawn you your first 4 stalkers. Now you're going to want to immediately run to the right and hang out in the back so that nothing can come at you from behind. Run around to lure the stalkers in and blam to each one of them. With all 4 down, you are safe to go to the exit door and slide your key card for an easier exit later. Feel free at this point to get the lay of the land too, as you will need to be very quick for this next part. Now jump down to the first floor and start the generator up, which will spawn the next wave of enemies, including a bloater. But all you need to do is, with your bottle in hand, run up this ramp and through the hallway to the door. On your way, you're gonna find one stalker. All you need to do is auto aim into it, throw your brick or bottle, and keep moving straight to the exit, and you're good to go. Not too bad. And actually, this leads you right into what I actually think is one of the hardest sections of the game, and that is the financial plaza, because you basically have to take out all these enemies just to get through it. And while you can stealthily take them all out, you can't just sneak right by and leave. And this is where I've been saving the age-old classic Last of Us advice, and that is to make every shot count. Well, sort of. It's true that you are given a scarce amount of ammo. And it's true that you need to make the most of what you have, but this game also has ammo tuned in a way that they always try to keep you stocked up to at least a certain amount of bullets. Like if your last bullet is used to kill an enemy, that enemy more times than not will drop enough bullets so that you can at least take out the next enemy. So the key here is when you're in an encounter, you should take your shots on enemies that you know you can get close enough to get that dropped ammo. Now, for this financial plaza section, I already knew that stealth was going to be a lost cause, and that if I just started the encounter right away, these guys would be surrounding me pretty good. So what I decided to do was make a break for a place where I could have my last stand, and that was this very familiar office setting. And while I was there, I remembered these wise words. And having given myself away, the enemies started coming, but more so one by one, because it's kind of hard for them to get to. I stealthily took out as many as I could as they tried to search for me, but I did have to shoot some down as needed. I even missed some of my shots, but ultimately I won it over and was left with enough ammo to get through the next section as well, and make it all the way to the armored truck, which is where I decided to run. But this is where I need to modify my earlier tip to run, and that is to do so with trial and error in mind. This game actually is quite forgiving with the checkpoints, even on grounded mode. In fact, there are actually 3 checkpoints just for this armored truck section. So after trying stealth in the beginning and eventually failing, I ran across the street and I got killed pretty quickly, but I respawned back across the street. So I could just start running again. And I kept dying and respawning, and I slowly but surely tuned my behavior through trial and error to try to get a little bit further each time before dying again. And well, I'm ashamed to admit I was a little bit dumb at first, not really understanding what I was doing wrong, but eventually I realized that I could run straight for the window, duck, but then keep ducked for a while until I reached the back of the building. And this triggered another checkpoint. So I just repeated this process of trial and error, taking out the guy, pausing at the van, then taking out the other guy, and running to eventually meet Sam and Henry. And the 4 of us fought our way out of the city. And I like to just pause and sometimes let Henry take people out, so I didn't have to use my bullets. But of course, later, as expected, I messed up stealth again, so decided to go guns blazing all the way to the sewers, where there are some other tough sections. Particularly the section where you get stuck with Sam didn't go so well. After a failed attempt to use a smoke bomb to mask our escape, I reverted to the bottleneck approach, which is where I go to a place where I know my back is safe and no one could come from behind me. And I let the enemies funnel into me kind of one by one. Again, even with little ammo, most of the kills granted me enough ammo to survive the next enemy that would come, until it was finally time to get out. And I met up again with Henry and Ellie, and we had to make our escape, and all I really needed to do was use some of the throwables that I had to try to clear the enemies, but mostly just kind of run around, letting Henry take care of a lot of them until the kiddos got the door open. And now after safely making it to the suburbs, and after a few failed darts, we hit the sniper, which is actually not that hard again, as there are pretty forgiving checkpoints and a little trial and error can get you there quickly. All you really need to do is stick to the left and keep your head down. Pick off the 3 enemies that you will encounter and hop the fence. Then you just run around the building from the back and take out the sniper. Of course, until Sam gets bitten and Henry doesn't take it well, and so you and Ellie have to go alone to the dam to meet Tommy. Now, there does seem to be a clear and present danger around Jackson, so you definitely shouldn't be trusting of any nearby humans you encounter like these bandits. And this gets me to my next tip, which is when engaged in firefights with enemies, stay low and in cover, and only pop out when firing your gun. The humans in Grounded are really good shots, and so taking a lot of time to aim will be the death of you. So try to pop out of cover only briefly and take your shots as quickly as possible. One way to do this quicker is to pre-aim. Basically, before you poke your head out, center your camera where you want to shoot, and when you pop out, your aim will be right there. Using this got me through the damn encounters. And after treading on some mighty thin ice, we head to the university. And now, making your way through the university and going through the dorm buildings, I highly recommend stealth, because this bloater in this cramped space is not fun. So what I do is my stealth tip of aiming my throwable with half stick deflection, and I basically follow this clicker into the back rooms. But as he goes left, you go right. Keeping this slow pace, I can sneak by the bloater, and all I do is throw a bottle to distract them, which gives you just enough time to make your narrow escape. And find out that instead of fireflies, all you have are monkeys and goons waiting to knock you off the second story and impale you just in time for winter. As Ellie, things get pretty tough pretty quickly, especially as you meet David and fight the horde of infected. Basically for this, check the windows and shoot through it. You can use the hunting rifle the whole time if you want. David will fill you up and enemies will drop bullets pretty regularly. At some point it does get pretty crazy, but you can kind of just run around in circles and reload and take them out one by one. Focus more so on the clickers because they're going to be more deadly. Eventually, you're going to reach this building with a bridge and an elevator, and this is one of the hardest sections in the game. Basically, what you should do is gather everything you can from the main room and run to the bridge where enemies will start to come. You can take them out one by one and then rotate back to the elevator room, running around the whole time so that no one can catch you off guard. At some point, you'll reach a slight lull in the action, and this is basically signifying a checkpoint. And yeah, I ended up dying, but I basically started right back here. And from here, I used some trial and error to get through the last remaining enemies. There's a number of bricks on the ground, which I used to quick toss and knife the clickers. And I try to use my bow as much as possible on anyone else because I want to use my hunting rifle and my throwables for the bloater. I throw everything at him right at once and a couple hunting rifle shots and he's done. You just need to remember there are a couple other runners too. And not to step on your own molly fire. Okay, so trying that again, we take out the bloater, and this time remember that the runners are there, and so we take them out. It's actually a really fun section to fight through. But then David gets creepy, and so you have to escape and try to lure them away from Joel, and Callus gets whacked, so you have to go on foot. Again, sucking at stealth, I found a great last stand spot to take everyone out one by one and trudge forward, doing essentially the same thing at the next section and getting me to the eventual fucking horrible David fight where he chases you like a madman through the fiery kitchen. And this is really the hardest section. And in order to get through this takes me to my next tip. And that is, when in doubt, see how the speedrunners do it. Even though speedrunners have this tremendous skill at the game that you and me both don't really have, you can still get a lot from them, and they often do know the best route through, so we can just sloppily try to do the same thing. So basically, I looked up how multi-Last of Us world record holder Anthony Caliber gets through this section. And well, the first 2 hits on David, I could do just like him. You sneak around the booth and you stab him, and then you hide behind this one, letting him kind of flip around, and then you stab him again. But this third stab required a bottle, which I didn't have, so I had to improvise and do a little bit of trial and error. Luckily though, they checkpoint each stab, so you don't start from the beginning. And after a few attempts, I found the pathway around the bend just out of sight and got that sucker. At this point, Joel and Ellie reunite and they make their way to Salt Lake, where they will share a tender moment with giraffes. But soon they have to go underground, where plenty of infected are. But honestly, this is not too bad to stealth through. Sneak largely to the right towards this inner chamber, and you can slowly take these 3 infected out. Then you basically use these bottles, I use 3, and toss them to the left to lure the bloaters and the infected away from your exit. All you need to do now is slowly move to the right and lift Ellie, and you can get out just in time to fall on the bus and almost drown her and finally meet the Fireflies. And now once you do get to the Fireflies, and especially if you're still not good at stealth like me, there's really no point in saving your resources. So go ahead, use everything you got. I fought my way through to the very end and eventually taking Jerry out. Honestly, I ended up having more supplies than I even needed to get through. So another tip is you could probably be a little bit more liberal with your throwables if you wanted to. But yeah, you can definitely kind of brute force your way kind of sloppily through the game like I did. And you don't really have to worry too much. I definitely thought going into this that I was going to run out of things and be left fighting tons of enemies with only my bare hands. But this was just not the case. I still got to the end eventually, and I got to lie to Ellie, and you can too. I'm sure they lived happily ever after, by the way. But there may still be more tips that you need to help you get through your Last of Us playthrough. And that's why you should check this video right here, which is my essential survival guide to The Last of Us Part 1. So you should check it out. But otherwise, so long, Pooper Troopers.